Hey you geeks, I'm overdue for an homage to the old masters. I swear, the Inklings are like the Order of the White Lotus for fantasy.
All old people know each other, don't you know that?
So today, we're doing 10 things about the magician's nephew. This is my third favorite Narnia book. I first read it back around 4th or 5th grade as part of my parents' lesson in how to distinguish the right sort from the wrong sort of magic.
I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks.
For required reading, I found this book quite enjoyable. It was the sort of light-hearted Narnia tale promised by The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, not the post-Telmarin Narnia, which I hate. Returning to it as an adult, the story still held up, and new things stood out to me, which would have bumped it up in the rankings, except it falls prey to C.S. Lewis's folly of direct allegory. The characters lose their motivations for the point of symbolism. My thoughts on this book don't break down neatly into my usual categories for review, so here are 10 things about The Magician's Nephew. Spoilers, of course. Uncle Andrew is a cad. This struck me hard when rereading. As a child, I found Uncle Andrew's antics humorous. I believed that some rules clearly did not apply to him because he was an eccentric yet oblivious magician. Now him locking the children in the attic, tricking Polly into taking a ring, and planning to exploit Narnia disgust me. Sure, funny things happened to him, but Lewis clearly wrote him as a villain, and I totally missed it the first time. As a child, I romanticized the idea of having a magician for an uncle. Drosselmeyer from The Nutcracker and Sirius Black from Harry Potter were dangerous but kindly men. I imagined Uncle Andrew was more like them than he actually was. In hindsight, Uncle Andrew might have been my first romanticized villain. If you are a parent, I would recommend this book for children 3rd grade and below, especially for girls, if you want them to really get the point. Once they get too close to puberty, things go a bit screwy in their brains. One magic to inspire them all. This book is an overlooked pioneer of hard magic systems, probably because Narnia as a whole relies on Deus Ex Machina to solve all their climactic problems. However, as Jada says, Uncle Andrew is a little peddling magician who works by rules and books. There is no real magic in his blood or heart. She does not seem to have a high opinion of rules, although they bind her too. I can almost read Chesterton's Ethics of Elfland between the lines of this novel. In World, Uncle Andrew and the children discover the rules of magic rings. In my last 10 Things video, I lambasted Daniel Green for blatantly riffing off Robert Jordan. Well, when I was in 4th grade, I lambasted Lewis for blatantly riffing off Tolkien using rings in this book. So Mr. Green has some good company. But the magic is more than just rings. Uncle Andrew acquires what he believes to be an Atlantean box containing dust from another world. Considering what he says about his godmother, I suppose this is
Faith, trust, and pixie dust.
I also now recall magic dust appearing in some other series that shall not be named. Moreover, the rings can be heard humming and act like magnets. Whether by intent or coincidence, or the result of hanging out in similar circles, Lewis's dabblings here by merging magic with science has had far-reaching effects in modern fantasy. Disney prequel syndrome. We give Disney plenty of flack for their prequel villain stories. Well, Lewis did it first. Though the witch's origin story as the Empress Jadis is in no way redemptive for her whatsoever. But Lewis's meta-commentary does give us a few gems about the nature of witches in general, though Lewis does give her a love interest, while Uncle Andrew seems to be very interested in her, while Jadis has no interest in the likes of him. This is an interesting tidbit, but other tidbits, while interesting, were not needed.
Seems familiar.
I've heard it said that Lewis wrote Narnia because Tolkien said that fantasy worlds did not have lampposts, or something like that. That was enough of an origin for me. Jadis tearing a bar off a lamppost in London, then bringing it to Narnia seems overkill. I love The Wood Between the Worlds. The Wood Between the Worlds is the best magical land ever. It has an ethereal fairyland feel that goes back into the primeval myths of fairies, while also looking forward to incorporate all fantasy lands to come. When I first read this book, I knew instinctively that Middle-earth was at the bottom of one of those pools, as well as Alagasia. Now I suppose Randland and the Cosmere have their own pools. Well, the Cosmere might have several. I have to think on that some more. I have an idea of Laraceline from The Horse and His Boy showing up on Roshar in her palanquin, since the rules of the worlds are not contradictory. I can make it work, somehow. Backstory for Tolkien. This story is also the origin of the professor who appears in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You may have heard that Lewis based this character off Tolkien, so I wonder what happened to inspire this story of a mischievous little boy who introduced evil into Lewis's magical land. I'd have thought Lewis would have enjoyed being turned into an Ent in Middle-earth.
Tree? I am no tree. I am an Ent.
Well, whatever happened, it's kind of refreshing to see a boy blamed for messing everything up in the story's obvious Genesis parallels. Polly did not want to ring the bell. She was a practical girl. Diggory, that dreadful boy, felt himself going mad with curiosity and just had to ring the bell. These two have the most wonderful argument, and then because this is a children's story, everything turns out all right in the end. Imagine creation. The Magician's Nephew has great world building because we get to see a world being built. Well, sung into existence and then named.
We will rule over all this land, and we will call it this land.
It's very simple and easy to follow, with even a side plot to keep it interesting. This story makes Narnia more understandable to the reader, unlike the Silmarillion. I highly recommend reading this before the Silmarillion, even if you are an adult, because Lewis does a marvelous job of describing precisely how creation can be done in a song. Without this book, I could not have made it through the Iolindala. Horses. Lewis clearly loves horses, and his horse characters are the best.
Horses.
Fledge, formerly known as Strawberry, is a hoot and the second best horse character in the Chronicles. He falls short of first because he creates a plot hole that bothered me even the first time I read it. Aslan made him a flying horse and named him the father of all flying horses. So why aren't all horses in Narnia flying horses by the next book? There were only 2 horses chosen to be talking animals, and it seemed like Aslan put the kibosh on getting frisky with the lesser animals. So I guess he raised another talking stallion off-page? Fledge comes in second to Bree, the best horse in fantasy, though Fledge is a good deal more humble than Bree, which is probably why he was chosen to fly. That darn Lewis and his allegory. I love stories that use symbols and riff off ancient philosophy, but it's tiresome if the story is a one-to-one comparison. Lewis pulls practically exclusively from Genesis. The best I can say is that he combines both stories of creation from the good book, but he's not subtle about it at all. After Aslan sings the world and the animals into existence, he gives some animals his breath and intelligence. Then we cut into the Garden of Eden, complete with forbidden fruit. Because you see, the bird and the lion are both Jesus, and they want you very much to do as you're told. Even reading this as a fourth grader, it was dull. Broken plot. I've always felt this book lacked a real sense of direction. The first 2/3 are the children just randomly getting thrust into magical worlds and being childish. While realistic in the strict sense of if you thrust 2 children into an alternate world, the least trouble they dig up is a 7-foot-tall sorceress bent on world domination. For a story, Diggory lacks any compelling motivation until the final act. We know his mother is sick and likely to die from the beginning, but his quest for something that could cure her doesn't come up until his aunt spells it out for him. Unlike the other Narnia books, which start with a quest and get sidetracked, this book starts with getting sidetracked until the home stretch where the characters stumble into a plot. Deplorable word. Lewis ends his story with a command and a warning. The command only explains why no one else used Uncle Andrew's magic rings throughout the first 5 books in release order of the Chronicles. The warning comes in the form of a sermon, of course, on the evils of nuclear war and despots.
Teach your children well.
This obliterates the fourth wall, as Aslan clearly had no intention of Diggory or Polly stopping World War II from happening, though I would totally read that alternate history. Rather, he's talking to the young reader of the story, who, if it is a jaded 4th grader, might spend more of her time trying to figure out what sort of word could bring the destruction of a world instead of heeding Aslan's warning. In short, The Magician's Nephew has great moments, some of the greatest moments in Narnia. Yet Lewis rides very close to the line of sermon with too many ideas to be coherent on a certain topic. Much like this video, though I lay no claims on this being coherent. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.